Hey everyone and welcome. If you've ever felt that managing subcontracting in Dynamics NAV is kind of a black box, well, you've come to the right place. We are going to pull back the curtain and demystify the entire process, from start to finish, making it super simple and manageable. Let's dive right in. So here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off by talking about the core challenge itself. Then we'll build your playbook, all the essential setup you need. After that, we'll follow a product as it goes out the door and comes back. Then we're going to flip the script and see what it looks like from the other side. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the big takeaways. All right, let's get to the heart of it. The fundamental problem we're all trying to solve is this. How do you keep control when a piece of your production is happening somewhere else, completely outside of your four walls? Let's make this real. Imagine your company builds bicycles, right? But a customer comes along and wants a super special custom paint job that your team just isn't set up to do. You have to send it out. So the big question is, how do you manage that whole process in NAV without losing track of your parts, your costs, or your production schedule? That is the core challenge we are tackling today. You know, to solve a challenge like that, you really need a solid game plan. So this section is your playbook. This is the foundational setup and NAV that you absolutely have to get right. Think of it as building the framework for success. So this playbook really comes down to 4 critical steps. First, you've got to create a work center. This is how you represent your subcontractor inside your own system. Second, and this is crucial, you link that work center directly to their vendor card. Third, you define the routing, which basically maps out the specific job they're going to do. And finally, fourth, you set their cost for that service. You get these 4 things right, and trust me, you are well on your way. Now, I just mentioned the term routing, and we need to pause on this for a second because it is so important. The best way to think of a routing is like a recipe for making your product. It tells NAV the exact sequence of steps, who does what, and that includes your subcontractor, and what the time and cost should be for each of those steps. It's literally the blueprint for your entire production order. All right, with our playbook all set up, it's time to follow our bicycle on its journey. This is where the theory becomes practice. We're going to track the physical parts and the money as we send our bikes out to get that awesome custom paint job. So where does it all begin? Well, everything kicks off with an internal command, a released production order. Let's say we need 10 bicycles with that special paint job. This production order is basically the official starting gun. It's what tells your whole system, okay, people, we are officially making this thing. And this is where NAV starts to do some of the heavy lifting for you. The subcontracting worksheet is constantly scanning your production orders. It sees that operation assigned to your subcontractor and basically says, hey, we need to go buy this service. Then it helps you generate a purchase order for the painter. And, this is the best part, it links it directly back to that specific step in your production order. It's so clean and connected. Okay, so the money side is sorted out with a purchase order. But what about the actual physical bikes? We have to ship 10 raw bicycle frames to the painter. How do we do that and make sure our inventory system knows exactly where they are? I mean, you can't just have them vanish from your warehouse and magically reappear later. That is a recipe for an inventory nightmare. And here is the absolutely brilliant solution: the transfer order. First, what you do is you create a sort of virtual location in NAV that actually represents your subcontractor's workshop. Then you use a transfer order to formally move the bikes from your main warehouse to this new sublocation. As soon as you ship that transfer order, NAV knows those 10 bikes aren't in your building anymore, but they're safely accounted for at the painter's site. It is such an elegant way to keep perfect track of your inventory. Now for the fun part. When those beautiful, freshly painted bicycles come back through your doors, your team in receiving simply receives them against the purchase order you made earlier. And here's the magic. The moment they post that receipt, it automatically tells the linked production order that the painting step is officially done. The system just closes the loop for you. It's that simple. Oh, a quick but really important question. What about shipping costs? Well, you've got 2 main ways to handle this. On the one hand, you can use what's called an item charge. That lets you apply the real freight cost after it happens, which is perfect if you want precise actual cost tracking. On the other hand, you could just add a transport step to your routing. This is better if you prefer to plan with standard costs up front. Really, the choice just comes down to this. Do you want to track actual costs, or do you want to plan it with standard costs? So far, we've been the customer, the one sending work out. But now, let's flip the script. What if we are the specialist?
What if we're the ones doing that custom paint job for somebody else? So yeah, the tables have completely turned. A customer ships us their raw bicycle frames. Our job is to add our value, the paint job, and then send them back. The challenge is totally different now, isn't it? How do we manage inventory that we don't even own? And how do we make sure we build them properly for our service and the materials we used? This slide really breaks down the difference perfectly. When you're sending work out, it's your inventory and your production. The most important document is a purchase order because you're paying a vendor. But when you're bringing work in, it's the customer's inventory and your service. The key document becomes a sales order, so you can invoice your customer. And here's a pro tip. You'll want to set up their parts as zero-value items so they don't mess with your own inventory valuation.
So the process for bringing work in really has 3 main steps. First, you receive the customer's parts, usually with a zero-value purchase order, just to get them in your system without messing up your financials. Second, you create your own internal production order to do the actual work, the painting. And finally, you create a sales order. This is how you ship the finished bikes back to the customer and, most importantly, how you invoice them for your awesome service.
Wow, okay, we have covered a ton of ground, from sending work out to bringing it back in. So let's just take a breath, bring it all together, and boil it all down to the most important things you need to remember.
Honestly, if you only remember 3 things from our time together, make it these 3. First, master the setup. That link between a work center and a vendor is your foundation. Second, track everything. Use transfer orders like they're your best friend because they give you total inventory visibility. And third, know your role. It's simple. Purchase orders are for paying vendors when you send work out. Sales orders are for billing customers when you bring work in. So we've walked through the entire subcontracting playbook. The real question now is, what are you going to do with it? I'll just leave you with this thought. Take a good look at your own operations. Where could mastering these principles unlock some new flexibility, some new efficiency in your supply chain? Thanks so much for watching.